What if the dream you thought was only a flicker of imagination was not a dream at all, but a trespass into forbidden territory? What if the nights when you felt your body frozen, unable to scream, your chest heavy beneath an unseen weight, were not malfunctions of the brain, but signs that something ancient had touched you? They call it the astral plane, a word whispered in esoteric orders, in occult grimoires, in hidden military programs that never admitted what they found. A place not of matter but of vibration. A layer of reality where thought takes form, where emotion solidifies into landscape, where entities move without flesh. Some call it illusion, others call it the truest world. But all agree on one thing. Once you step across, you are no longer safe. You might wake to find yourself floating above your body, tethered by a silver cord that trembles like a string of light. You might be drawn toward a tunnel blazing with false brilliance, voices coaxing you onward, promising salvation. Or you might feel the shadows press closer, feeding on the fear that rises in silence. This is not fantasy. This is the architecture of a hidden realm, a prison, and a battlefield disguised as dream. And once you glimpse it, once you hear the hum behind your sleep, you realize the boundary between waking and dreaming was never real-lit, was always a veil, and that veil has already been torn. To understand the astral plane, you must first abandon the notion of dreams as harmless illusions. What unfolds behind your closed eyes is not chaos, but architecture layered, precise, built to contain and to feed. The ancients knew it. Mystics spoke of 7 heavens and 7 hells. Shamans mapped spirit worlds. Gnostics described archontic realms hovering between earth and the divine. In every tradition, there was a recognition. The astral was not neutral. It was constructed. At its surface, the astral shimmers with seduction. These are the bright landscapes of dream, the false gardens where colors glow too vividly, where familiar faces smile with uncanny perfection. This is the first layer, designed to lull the soul into compliance. It is pleasant, it is comforting, and it is a trap. Beneath it lies the middle strata, the twilight zones of drifting visions, floating cities that dissolve when touched, oceans of black glass, towers of thought that bend under your gaze. This is the true battleground, where entities approach, where contracts are whispered, where your emotions sculpt the very ground beneath your feet. And deeper still lies the underworld of the astral, the parasitic layers. Here the air is thick, heavy with the scent of ozone and dust. Here shadows have weight, pressing upon the traveler. Here you hear buzzing, the low hum that has followed you since birth. The same hum detected in Saturn's frequencies, the same tone woven into the architecture of time itself. It is in these depths that the Archons hunt, feeding on the fear, shame, and lust that rise unbidden. These are not random monsters. They are functionaries of the system, jailers enforcing the prison. The structure is not haphazard. It mirrors a hierarchy. Just as governments have courts, armies, and prisons, so too does the astral. The bright layers serve as the welcoming lobby, the middle zones as negotiation halls, the lower depths as dungeons. At every stage, ritual is enforced. Speak the wrong word and the scene collapses. Think a fearful thought and doors slam shut. Entities appear not by chance, but by design. Some wear masks of guides, offering comfort, direction, even visions of divinity. Yet if you listen closely, their words are contracts. They urge you toward tunnels, toward gates of light, toward submission. They call it salvation. In truth, it is recycling. Architecture implies design, and design implies designer. The Gnostics called them Archons, rulers, architects of the false realms, powers that interpose themselves between the soul and the infinite. Theosophists spoke of lords of karma, beings who judge and assign rebirths. Modern occultists describe parasitic intelligences embedded in the astral layers. Different names, same function. They enforce boundaries. They keep the loop intact. This is why so many cultures describe the astral in terms of roads, gates, ladders. It is a system of passageways, and like any system, it can be navigated or it can imprison. The silver cord, that luminous tether binding soul to body, is part of the design. It allows return, but it also limits range. The tunnel of light reported by near-death experiencers is another architectural feature. It guides the disembodied back into the cycle, memory erased, contract renewed. Even the landscapes are not random. They are thought forms seeded by the system, illusions constructed to elicit reaction. The architecture's genius lies in its invisibility. Most travelers mistake it for personal dream, never realizing they are walking halls used by millions. Others glimpse its order but interpret it as divine, believing the guides. Baying the light, kneeling before the false thrones, few see it for what it is. A prison built of vibration. And fewer still learn to push beyond it, to slip past the gates, to pierce the hum and step into the unbounded. Yet the astral plane is not invincible. Its structures depend on agreement. The walls stand only so long as you believe them. The gates open only when you consent. The entities thrive only if you feed them. This is why initiation into astral awareness has always been dangerous. Because to enter unconsciously is to become livestock. To enter awake is to become sovereign. The architecture of evil is not chains around your body. It is a labyrinth for your soul. You wander it nightly, unknowing. You tread its halls when you dream, when you meditate, when you die. It greets you with light, feeds on your fear, binds you with contracts. And until you see the pattern, you remain a prisoner walking through walls of thought. But once you glimpse the structure, once you recognize the false gardens, the deceptive tunnels, the parasitic layers, the spell begins to weaken. You see the astral not as dream, but as design. You see the hum not as noise, but as signal. And in that recognition, the first crack opens in the architecture. Every prison requires signs, and the astral prison is no different. Its architecture is invisible to the untrained eye, but its language is symbols, geometric, luminous, hypnotic. To travel the astral is to walk through a cathedral of signs, each shape vibrating with meaning, each line commanding action. These are not decorations. They are programs. The most ancient of these symbols is the silver cord. Mystics across cultures describe it as a luminous thread connecting soul to flesh, a tether of light stretching from navel or crown back into the body. It is presented as safety, a lifeline, a guarantee you will return. What if the cord is not freedom, but leash? A filament woven by the system, ensuring you cannot wander beyond the permitted range. In dreams, it glows gently, reassuring. In truth, it trembles with control, a subtle reminder that your flight is monitored. Beyond the cord lies the tunnel of light. Countless near-death experiencers recount it. A radiant passage, warm voices calling, beloved faces smiling. The geometry is always the same, a narrowing tube, concentric circles drawing you forward. On the surface, it is salvation. But look deeper, and it is command geometry, a funnel designed to capture. Light becomes lure, circle becomes loop. The symbol is not an escape route, but a recycling chute. The soul steps in willingly, mistaking trap for transcendence. The astral is filled with other sigils, floating hexagons that pulse beneath your feet, spirals that suck consciousness downward, lattice of triangles forming walls you cannot cross. These are not random dream shapes. They are living codes, designed to regulate movement. Shamans saw them as spirit roads. Cultists recorded them as magical seals. Modern travelers call them fractals. It's different names, same function, symbolic programming. Entities themselves wield symbols as weapons. A guide may appear bearing a glowing emblem on its brow. A shadow may trace lines in the air, forming gates. Each gesture is spell, each symbol a contract. To stare at them too long is to absorb their vibration, to unconsciously agree. This is why grimoires warned against gazing at seals without preparation. The danger is not in what you see, but in what you're seeing activates. And yet, the language of symbols can liberate as well as enslave. The magician understands that every symbol is a key. Drawn consciously, a circle is not prison, but protection. Spoken with clarity, a name is not command, but invocation. Visualized with will, a sigil is not trap, but technology. The system weaponizes symbols by keeping them unconscious. The initiate reclaims them by making them deliberate. Consider modern parallels. Corporate logos are astral sigils, simple shapes repeated endlessly until they bypass thought and lodge in the subconscious. National flags are binding emblems, commanding allegiance without words. Even digital icons, the play button, the like symbol, are miniature spells, directing behavior through geometry. These are astral mechanics imported into the physical, proof that the same language governs both realms. The black cube of Saturn, the hexagon storm at its pole, the endless circles of ritual all are part of this lexicon. They reinforce the prison by repetition. Every cube you salute, every circle you walk, every light you chase strengthens the architecture. But once you see, the spell falters. Awareness breaks repetition. A symbol decoded is a symbol disarmed. Imagine drifting in astral space. A radiant sigil hovers before you, spiraling with impossible colors. You feel its pull, its silent command. Instead of obeying, you pause. But you recognize it as code, not truth. And in that recognition, the sigil flickers, collapses, dissolves into dust. The path opens, not by compliance, but by sight. The astral plane is written in symbols. Silver cord, the tunnel, the fractals, the sigils all speak in geometry. The Archons rely on your ignorance of the language. They feed on your blind obedience to its commands. But the moment you learn to read, the moment you see the hidden grammar, the walls of the prison reveal themselves as paper thin, and once revealed, they can be torn. Before the first coin was minted, before the first scroll of law was sealed, there was only one currency recognized across realms: blood. In the physical world, blood spilled on stone altars or battlefields was the undeniable proof of sacrifice, the payment that bound mortals to gods. In the astral plane, the principle endures, but the medium shifts. Here, blood is not crimson. Liquid it is the life force that surges through fear, lust, anguish, and desire. In other words, emotional energy is the astral equivalent of blood, and it is harvested with ruthless precision. Think of the moment of sleep paralysis. You wake to find your body paralyzed, chest pressed by an unseen weight, breath shallow, terror flooding every nerve. You are not alone. Shadow looms, faceless, voiceless, but palpably present. What is happening? Textbooks say hallucination. The ancients said incubi, succubi, night demons. The truth is simpler and darker. You are being bled. The terror you feel, the helplessness, is the astral bloodstream flowing out of you. Every ounce of fear radiates into the surrounding field, feeding entities who linger at the edge of perception. Nightmares are not random. They are harvest rituals. The chase, the fall, the drowning, each archetypal nightmare forces your system into panic, releasing torrents of emotional blood. You wake sweating, heart pounding, drained, and in the shadows, something is fed. The astral predators do not want your joy, your clarity, your sovereignty. They cannot digest it. They hunger for fear, for despair, for rage unchanneled. That is why the astral underworld teems with grotesque forms, why sleep paralysis encounters share uncanny similarity. They are optimized feeding events. This is not confined to the night. In waking life, wars, disasters, and tragedies all spill emotional blood into the astral. Mass fear after breaking news, collective grief after catastrophe. Rage amplified through conflictual rise like incense into the unseen. The Archons drink not from veins, but from vibrations. The Saturnian matrix is designed to trigger constant sacrifice, bleeding you through work, through anxiety, through shame. The altar is your own nervous system, and the blood is your emotion. Religions knew this truth, but masked it. The blood of Christ, exalted in Eucharist, is symbolic of ultimate sacrifice, an energetic currency presented to the Father. In ancient cults, the spilling of animal blood was both spectacle and exchange. Today, the forms shift, less literal, more psychological, but the current flows unbroken. Every ritual that demands obedience through guilt or fear is a siphon. Every doctrine that equates suffering with holiness is a pipeline of blood into the system. But the astral magician, the conscious traveler, knows blood is double-edged. It can enslave, but it can also empower. Sacrifice is the proof of will. In ritual, fasting, abstinence, even the prick of a finger on parchment tall, were acts of deliberate payment. The blood offered was chosen, not stolen. It anchored intent, opened gates, fueled transformation. The system inverts this, extracting blood unconsciously, feeding without permission, but the principle remains. Power flows where sacrifice is made. The question is whether you bleed for the machine or bleed for your awakening. Imagine facing the shadow in sleep paralysis. Instead of panic, you shift into awareness. You feel the fear rise, but you refuse to recoil. You direct it, transmute it, hold it. Predator finds nothing to drink because you have claimed the blood for yourself. That terror, once weaponized against you, becomes fire in your spine, clarity in your gaze. The feeding fails, the shadow dissolves. This is the alchemy of astral blood. What was once harvest becomes transformation. The system thrives on unchosen sacrifice. Break the pattern, and it begins to starve. This is why awareness is feared. Because an awakened traveler is not livestock. They may still bleed, but their blood is theirs to spend. And each drop invested in sovereignty is a drop withheld from the Archons. The oldest currency remains unchanged. Temples of stone, it was blood on the altar. In the astral, it is fear in the air. But now you know, every surge of emotion is either stolen or claimed, wasted or wielded. To awaken is to choose. To awaken is to bleed not for the system, but for yourself. Every harvest ends in an agreement, and on the astral plane, the oldest law still applies. Power is never free. You can drift, you can glimpse, you can watch, but the moment you wish to influence, to gain knowledge, to cross thresholds beyond your range, the entities appear. They do not roar, they do not threaten, they negotiate. They offer protection from other beings, visions of the future, abilities, insights. All they ask in return is essence, not your signature in ink, but your consent in thought, your vibration in trust, your surrender in subtle gestures. This is the true commerce of the astral. The myths you have heard about witches and demons, it's about Faust and Mephistopheles, about shamans who pay a price for their spirits. They are allegories of this exchange. In ancient nights, a sorcerer might cut his hand, sign a pact in blood, burn herbs, and chant names. In the astral, the contract is more invisible but no less binding. A being drifts toward you, cloaked in light, or whispers in a voice familiar. It says, "I will guide you. I will keep you safe. I will reveal the hidden." If you agree without clarity, you have signed. You wake the next morning feeling drained, your dreams forgotten, your emotions heavy. Something has fed. These entities are masters of inversion, who are masks of guides, angels, ancestors. They frame consent as destiny, manipulation as teaching, extraction as initiation. They are the cosmic bureaucrats of the archonic system, enforcing a ledger you never knew existed. Karma is their currency, contracts their technology. Each lifetime renewed is another signature. Each trauma repeated is another clause fulfilled. Even modern institutions mirror this pattern. Governments draft invisible contracts of obedience. Corporations demand endless clicks of "I agree." Social platforms harvest your data and your attention. Astral equivalents of blood. Military programs probing the astral plane, remote viewing. Stargate inevitably run into beings offering information at a price. As above, so below. The cosmic contract trickles into every earthly agreement. But like in ceremonial magic, the key is not far, it is clarity. The true magician never begs, never worships, invokes authority higher than the entity, states his terms, seals his circle. He knows what he is willing to give and what he will not. This is why grimoires are filled with detailed prayers, sigils, circles. They are not superstition, they're legal language, binding clauses. The magician enters the court of spirits prepared. On the astral, sovereignty is your only defense. Awareness of your own intention is your only signature. The entities cannot truly force you. They can only seduce you, trick you, or rush you into agreement. If you hesitate, if you demand clarity, if you invoke your own source, their power collapses. They retreat because their contracts cannot survive scrutiny. The false light trap itself relies on this. At death, the soul emerges, dazed. The tunnel appears. Voices call. If you go without question, you return. If you pause, if you say no, if you remember, the gate flickers and collapses. Consent withdrawn, contract void. Now, this is the forbidden knowledge hidden in myths of crossroads and bargains. You are not powerless. You are the arbiter. Even in the astral, law bows to clarity. but clarity requires preparation. You cannot improvise a contract when the entity is already before you. You must know your will before you leave the body. You must know what you want and what you will not pay. Imagine standing in the twilight zone of the astral, silver cord trembling, a glowing figure before you. It stretches out a hand, symbols flickering on its palm like living code. It offers visions, power, protection. The air hums with promise. In that moment, the choice is yours. Accept unconsciously, and you will bleed essence for lifetimes. State your authority, refuse the hidden clauses, and you may walk away unbound. The being cannot cross your line without your permission. Contract dissolves into nothing. This is the inversion the system fears most. An aware soul refusing the deal. Because every soul that refuses weakens the grid. Every contract voided is a node of control collapsing. The Archons cannot enforce what you do not sign. The astral predators cannot feed on what you do not give. This is why awareness feels like war. It is not a war of swords, but of signatures. The astral plane is a market of pacts. Every offer is a test. Every promise is a clause. It's the only power you have is your word. Use it unconsciously, and you are bound. Use it consciously, and you are free. In the astral plane, contracts are rarely presented as contracts. They arrive as comfort, as guidance, as the warm hand of a teacher, and the rules you are taught to follow there. Like the rules you were taught here, are not neutral. They are inverted. This is the Archon's true mastery. They do not simply harvest. They reprogram your moral compass so that you will harvest yourself for them. From your earliest journeys in dream and vision, you are conditioned to associate light with good, darkness with evil, obedience with safety, curiosity with danger. This conditioning is reinforced across lifetimes, religions, cultures, becomes even more potent. Entities appear in radiant form, cloaked in gold or white, their voices soft, their gestures inviting. They tell you to surrender. They call surrender trust. They call passivity virtue. They call your questions pride. And because you are programmed to equate brightness with goodness, you obey. You step into the tunnel, you agree to return, you give away essence. In truth, you have not met an angel, you have met a bureaucrat of the Matrix disguised as an angel. This is the inverted moral code. Rebellion against enslavement is labeled sin, while docility is labeled salvation. Courage to look behind the mask is framed as paranoia. The decision to refuse is called fear. But the entities feeding you these labels know exactly what they are doing. They cannot bind a soul that knows its own shadow, so they demonize your shadow, making you ashamed of your power. They cannot feed on joy, so they tell you joy is selfish. They cannot feed on sovereignty, so they tell you sovereignty is rebellion against divine order. Imagine the moment of death, stepping out of your body. A tunnel blazes with brilliant light. Familiar faces call you, guides in white beckon. Every cell in your being wants to go, but in the depth of your consciousness, something stirs memory. You see the geometry behind the glow, the sigils rotating in the light, the contract hidden in the invitation. You pause. The guides shift, their faces flicker. The warmth cools. The tunnel's edges darken. In that instant, you realize the entire presentation was designed to elicit consent, not to save you, but to recycle you. This inversion pervades every layer. Parasites appear as protectors, traps appear as gifts, clauses appear as blessings. Even your own emotions are inverted: fear framed as devotion, obedience framed as love, shame framed as humility. These are not random confusions. They are the architecture of the astral moral code. They keep you uncertain, doubting your inner compass, reaching for external approval. And yet the antidote is simple, though not easy. Integration. You must reclaim the parts of yourself that the Matrix told you were dangerous. Anger can be clarity. Desire can be magnetism. Curiosity can be discernment. These energies, when owned, form your armor. They are not sins, they are tools. The inverted code loses its hold when you stop outsourcing your morality to appearances and start feeling resonance instead. In the astral, this skill is life or death. An entity may shine with dazzling light, but your inner sense may feel a cold tug beneath. Trust that. Another may appear as shadow, but your inner sense may feel calm, neutral, unthreatening. Trust that. This is why the Archons fear integrated souls. traveler who has embraced their shadow cannot be manipulated by shame. A traveler who has seen through the false light cannot be lured by brightness. A traveler who has reclaimed their sovereignty does not need external authority. Such a soul is invisible to their hooks. They can offer no contract, no tunnel, no guide that will work. The system starves on them. The inverted moral code is the keystone of the astral prison. Move it, and the rest collapses. Contracts lose their pull, rituals lose their charge, symbols lose their spell, because all of it rests on your belief that obedience is good and power is evil. Shift that belief, and the architecture dissolves. This is not an intellectual exercise. It is visceral. It happens in the gut when you meet a guide and feel the hidden hunger behind their eyes. It happens in the heart when you realize your fear is being fed upon. It happens in the spine when you decide to stand, to breathe, to remember. Picture yourself floating in the astral void. A radiant being approaches. Child, it says, follow me, trust me, surrender. But instead of bowing, you look, you feel, you sense, and you answer, show me your seal. State your terms. Reveal your intent. The being flickers. The mask slides. The contract crumbles. You drift on, unbound. This is the inversion inverted, the mirror turned back. The Archons have built their empire on confusion, on reflexes trained over lifetimes. They cannot survive discernment, cannot withstand a soul who has integrated light and dark, and therefore no longer reacts to appearances. That is the moral code beyond the code, not obedience, but awareness. Not rebellion for its own sake, but sovereignty. Not fear of sin, but refusal to feed deception. The astral plane will always test you. Its traps are designed to look like gifts. Its parasites were the faces of loved ones. Its contracts masquerade as teachings. But once you recognize the inversion, the test becomes training. Each encounter is a chance to refine discernment, to claim power, to walk unbound. This is the truth hidden in every myth of crossroads and bargains, every story of devils and deals. It was never about worshiping darkness or fearing light. It was about learning to see through masks. The inverted moral code is a veil. Pull it aside and the prison collapses. You were told rituals belong only to witches, shamans, or priests in dim temples. But if the astral plane has shown anything, it is this. Ritual is not exception, it is foundation. Everywhere you look, in waking and in dreaming, you find the same mechanics: symbol, intention, offering. Every culture has its chants. It's every empire its ceremonies, every army its oaths. They are not metaphors. They are gateways. They open astral currents, whether the participants understand or not. Consider the shaman in a smoke-filled hut. He beats a drum, steady, unyielding. The rhythm deepens, and consciousness begins to shift. The participants see visions, feel presences, hear voices. Modern science calls it trance. Esoteric traditions call it travel. What is happening is ritualized astral projection, an engine of sound propelling the soul beyond the flesh. The shaman returns with knowledge, with healing, with warnings. This is ritual as tool. Now consider the monk in a cloister, chanting in Latin or Sanskrit. Hundreds of voices merge into one. The air vibrates, the walls tremble. The chants are not only praises, they are codes, each syllable a key, each intonation a frequency. Together they form corridors in the astral. Angels or guides appear. The faithful believe divinity has descended, but strip away the mask and you see the same pattern. Sound as ritual, ritual as astral access. Governments know this too. During the Cold War, the CIA's Stargate project trained soldiers to enter altered states, to see across distance, to spy through the astral. It was not framed as ritual, but the methods were the same: controlled breathing, focus on symbols, strict repetition. The soldiers became unwilling magicians, their minds cast into realms beyond matter. Some returned shaken, reporting presences watching them, entities interfering. Even without incense or robes, ritual was happening, and the astral was responding. Corporate life is no less ritualized. Workers line up in cubicles, their days divided by bells, their energies offered in cycles. Every meeting is a liturgy of power. Every slogan recited, every anthem sung, every logo repeated is invocation. You may scoff, but the astral does not. Symbols are symbols whether worn by priests or executives. Ritual is ritual whether performed in temple or boardroom. The astral currents open just the same, feeding the same architecture. Even ordinary life is saturated with ritual. Birthday candles blown with a wish, funerals where words are repeated, national anthems sung before games. Each act is a script, repeated millions of times, directing emotional energy upward. Where does it go? Into the astral grid. Into the mouths of parasites who feast on collective offering. The participants think they are honoring tradition, but their energy is being harvested. And here is the inversion. Conscious rituals that empower the self are demonized, while unconscious rituals that feed the machine are normalized. Society mocks witches drawing circles, but celebrates millions chanting slogans in stadiums. It fears shamans entering trance, but enforces children pledging allegiance by rote. Ad hides the true engine. Ritual is everywhere, and whoever controls it controls reality. Yet the magician knows another path. When ritual is made deliberate, it ceases to enslave and begins to liberate. A candle lit with clear intent becomes more powerful than a cathedral of unconscious worship. A mantra repeated with awareness is stronger than 1,000 stadium chants. The astral responds not to scale, but to sovereignty. The smallest act of conscious ritual can shake the largest system of unconscious obedience. Imagine this. You stand in your room, alone. No robes, no choir, no temple. You breathe, you focus, you draw a simple sigil. The room shifts, the air hums. You feel presence. You have entered the astral consciously, not through accident, not through programming, but through chosen ritual. In that moment, you are not prey. You are a conductor. The same mechanics that governments use, that religions use, that corporations use, you reclaim for yourself. This is why true ritual knowledge is suppressed, because one sovereign magician is more dangerous than 1,000 obedient worshippers. The astral does not distinguish between sacred and mundane, religious and secular. It only answers to ritual. Ritual is everywhere. The only question is, do you practice it unconsciously, feeding a system that drains you? Or do you reclaim it, direct it, weaponize it for awakening? The Archons understand this better than anyone. That is why they saturate the world with unconscious rituals, to keep you too drained to perform your own. That is why they invert the code, to keep you ashamed of your power. But once you understand that every repeated act is a ceremony, every word spoken with emotion is a spell, every symbol repeated is a sigil, the game changes. You stop being livestock in ritual and become ritual itself. Ritual is everywhere, and once you awaken to this, you are no longer trapped in it. Two are the one who wields it. For most, the plane feels like dream, fragile, fleeting, dissolving at dawn. But the moment you see the pattern, you realize it was never chaos. It was ritualized order, an engineered labyrinth designed to keep you compliant. Awakening begins when you admit the astral is not randomite, is programmed. At first, the realization is disorienting. You float above your body, tethered by the silver cord, and you see the tunnel blazing ahead. For lifetimes you stepped into it without question, believing it to be salvation. But this time you hesitate. You notice the geometry in its walls. Repeating hexagons, spirals of light that rotate like gears, and then it hits you. This is not heaven, it is circuitry. This is not liberation, it is containment. The light is bait, the tunnel is funnel, the return is contract. Awareness shatters the glamour. The tunnel flickers, destabilizes, reveals itself as hollow. The same happens with entities. A glowing being appears, radiant, promising guidance. In the past, you would kneel, grateful for its presence. Now, you look closer. Its light does not warm, it blinds. Its words do not teach, they bind. You ask for its seal, for its name. The mask cracks. Behind the glow is hunger, behind the mask is parasite. Awakening means reclaiming sovereignty in this space. It means realizing the silver cord is not only leash but lifeline. You can choose whether to return or not. It means seeing symbols not as commands, but as codes. You can read, reprogram, invert. You still feel desire, but you channel it. What once drained you now fuels you. The Archons cannot withstand this. Their architecture is fragile, dependent on your ignorance. They can only harvest fear when you believe fear is sin. They can only bind you with contracts when you sign unconsciously. But once you awaken, once you see through inversion, their power collapses. They retreat not because you fight them with force, but because you no longer feed them with consent. This is why the path is lonely. Most wander astral halls blind, obeying symbols, chasing lights, trusting guides. They will call you paranoid, rebellious, lost. But this too is programming, meant to keep you doubting yourself. Awakening demands trust in your own resonance. It demands you look at the radiant tunnel and say no, even when every teaching told you yes. It demands you stand before a glowing figure and refuse, even when it promises salvation. Sovereignty feels like rebellion at first, because you have been programmed to call it sin. But the deeper you walk, the clearer it becomes. The hum you once mistook for background noise is revealed as broadcast. The nightmares you once feared as random are revealed as feeding sessions. Awareness severs cords more effectively than any sword. Refusal collapses, contracts more completely than any exorcism. Awakening is not about fleeing the astral. It is about rewriting your role within it. You are no longer livestock, no longer petitioner, no longer debtor. You are traveler, negotiator, sovereign. The astral does not vanish, it changes. The traps still appear, but you recognize them. The parasites still approach, but they recoil when you look them in the eye. The tunnels still shine, but their light no longer seduces. And perhaps the most forbidden truth of all, the astral is not separate from you. Its symbols, its tunnels, its contracts are reflections of your own unconscious, projected outward. The prison exists because you agreed to its rules. The awakening begins when you withdraw agreement. And once you see this, you are free not because you escaped, but because you remembered. You were the ritual all along. You are the sigil, the seal, the cord, the contract. The astral has always been mirror, never master. The moment you awaken to that, the prison cracks, the hum fades, and the infinite opens. But once you awaken, you cannot return to blindness. Another veil trembles, another passage calls. Will you step deeper into the forbidden, or let the cycle close again? Comment, subscribe, and choose your path.